Quest Courage. Incarnation is not for sissies, not if you want to do it right. In recent years, I've been thinking about the saying that now makes a lot more sense. Aging is not for sissies. However, to be fair, I would also add that childhood is not for sissies. Adolescence is not for sissies, nor is it for people in their 20s or for the middle aged. So we could generalize it to human incarnation is not for sissies, but each part of the life cycle presents its own special challenges that need to be met with Quest Courage. Perhaps with the typical naive overconfidence of the disincarnate, you chose this particular incarnation with all its hardships and challenges. You can see something I wrote called Friends Don't Let Friends Incarnate in the Babylon Matrix. And I accept that, at least for myself. Now, maybe I'm not going to suggest that to a baby dying of leukemia, but for myself, through all the travails and trials, I see like a high level of design in my entire life. It's had such thematic continuity that I accept that for myself. I don't know that I would impose that idea on a continent of people dying of famine or something like that. But it's a very empowering stance that you can choose. It shouldn't be imposed on anyone else. Like in the horrible saying of 7-step groups or whatever, God only gives you the burdens you need to bear. Okay, I don't want to tell that to a baby that was in a dying under rubble, in a building that just got bombed in a war zone or something. But I accept it for myself, at least so far. Now that you are incarnate, you may feel some buyer's remorse about what you signed on for. Nevertheless, you need to summon the courage to see this incarnation through, and that requires warrior skills and resolve. The occurrence of this card means rising to the challenge and persisting through rainstorms, deserts, political upheavals, interpersonal conflicts, financial difficulties, health problems, threshold guardians, and dark nights of the soul. This card calls you to discover, recognize, or double down on your quest, your life mission, what you came here to do, and will remember well on your deathbed. It means accessing what Aleister Crowley calls true will and using it to engage effectively with life, to do your highest value work, and nurture your key relationships and work through all the mechanically resistant, mundane details needed to keep your mission going. It means staying true to a quest that serves the world and leads to your soul fulfillment. So this relates to a problem I have. It's a minor problem, but it relates to my not having a problem that a lot of other people apparently do have, and who come to me when I do free dream interpretation and Zap Oracle readings at festivals and stuff like that. It seems that like a very high percentage of those people, their problem is they don't have a life mission at all, and have no clue how to get one. And I think that because there's a strong self-selection factor, like in people who are going to come to somebody who looks like me, there's a lot of information kind of encoded in my appearance that I don't look like a fuzzy personal feeling, new age female tarot reader or somebody who's going to like tell them how special they are and something like that. I kind of, what you see is what you get. You get kind of like this, authentic but confrontational, somewhat blunt perspective. And by the way, I do offer that, rarely used, and I wouldn't have time for it if it was more frequently used, but there is a services tab up there on the navigator if anybody wants to consult me for an oracle reading. They do have to pay for it when I'm not at festivals because it takes a chunk out of my day. But if you find me at the National Rainbow Gathering or festivals, I will do it all for free. But they will come to me because they don't know what their life mission is. And unfortunately, I'm much better able to advise people about problems that I have had, which are many, and are often extremely relevant to the problems that people present. But this is a particular problem I've not had because there's been this extreme thematic continuity in my life where I've had like an implicit life mission all along. My first major paranormal experience that involved death and a lot of the same singularity archetype themes I'm still working on happened at 2.5 years old. And by 20, when I discovered the singularity archetype and the muse commanded me to write a fantasy sci-fi epic about it called Parallel Journeys, then I had a quest. I had a mission that's still ongoing, and that propels me through life like a guiding star, and in chaos math we'd call it a strange attractor or something like that. And so the only advice I'm able to give if you're one of those people that lacks that mission is, well, you can read my essay or watch it as a YouTube called The Path to Numinous, Living and Working with the Creative Muse. The essential idea is if you look for something in the world that is numinous, numen means spirit, so it's something that lights up with an uncanny significance, and now follow that down the rabbit hole. Now, the most common numinous objects for most people, the one that is the most unreliable to follow, doesn't mean you shouldn't follow it, is a person of like numinous physical beauty that you have romantic aspirations toward and so forth. Now, I've followed that down the rabbit hole, but further than most people into what underlies that tendency to form that kind of inflation of a particular person of romantic aspiration. And I've going all the way down the rabbit hole into what really underlies that. I've come up with some key ideas you'll find throughout my work, but especially in something else you can watch as a YouTuber read called Casting Precious into the Cracks of Doom, Androgyny, Alchemy, Evolution, and the One Ring. Also in another document called No Tristans Allowed Beyond This Point, Rethinking the Western Myth of Romantic Love. Otherwise, many other numinous objects can be followed to discover a life mission. Now, another very unreliable case is that what lights up as numinous for people are conspiracy theories that often relate to like archetypal things like QAnon, the idea that there's a cabal of the super powerful who are eating babies and stuff like that. This is like a Grimm's fairy tale. And so it is lighting up archetypes of the collective unconscious and deceptively leading people into toxic rabbit holes. You can see my YouTube called Problems with the Conspiratist Worldview. Now, let me be clear. The world is full of conspiracies. I would love to encounter a good conspiracy theory that helped to elucidate and expose some of those conspiracies. The problem is that most people who are conspiracy theorists totally suck at conspiracy theorizing. They're just really bad at the very thing that they're into. They just don't test reality properly. They don't look into the validity of different sources of information. They do their own research, but their research skills totally suck. And so they are double down on total nonsensical conspiracy theories that lead them into one deceptive rabbit hole after another. So those are examples of following the path of the numinous where you can be misled. But if it's something that feels deeply meaningful as well as numinous and it's life-affirming, that's the kind of thing to follow. And now, if we want to look into what underlies any good life mission, because I've said this before, but I think that the secret of life, people in the 60s would say, I just want to go out and discover the secret of life. Well, it's actually really well known. If you look into, I'm especially impressed with like the testimonies of people who've had near-death experiences. And because we've advanced so much just in even the last few years in resuscitation technology, these are really death experiences. These are people who've met every clinical definition of death and come back. And what they say, as well as people who've had other spiritual experiences in the present era and in past eras and in different cultures, is really they all come back and not all, but most recognizing the same secrets. Life is much more meaningful than you think it is in an ordinary state of consciousness. Even small moments, like how polite you were to a store clerk, may turn out to be very significant in their butterfly effects. Things that people thought were major turn out to be minor, like a job promotion. Other things they thought were minor, like a brief relationship, turn out to be major when they have a life review in the near-death experience. But the great purpose is to grow, evolve, develop yourself, grow your awareness, and to help other people with that or with anything, with, helping them with their physical survival, caring for other people. So caring for yourself, growing, evolving yourself, helping others. And then all great quests and life missions are built on top of that universal foundation, including my life mission. And if your life mission is not allowing you to grow or develop or becoming more awareness and or to help others, then it's a bad mission. Get off it. Now, the great thing about that foundational truth is the opportunities to grow and evolve yourself are basically infinite, because you can make consciousness work out of any activity. Gurdjieff once said that, if anybody was really good at anything, he could teach them to be more conscious and less mechanical, even if it were just being really good at making coffee. So you can approach any task with total impeccability and focus and make it consciousness work in that way. No other generation has had the access to the information that we do, the spiritual treasures. You can get online and read the most closely guarded secrets that were hidden in an inner courtyard, in the monastery, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, all free online. So if you're bored and you're not finding opportunities to develop yourself, I don't get it, because the opportunities are endless. And then the other great purpose, helping others, that's not hard to find. There's 8 billion people out there, and most of them need help in all kinds of ways. So you ought to be able to find a meaningful quest. For a good part of my 14 years of my life, I was a school teacher. That was very meaningful. What could be more meaningful? My mom often told me that, in the Jewish tradition, the greatest art was considered teaching. So there are so many helping professions, ways you can volunteer. If you can't think of a dramatic, highly individualized quest, then just get out there and work on yourself and on helping others in all the many ways that's available. So and then summon your quest courage to fulfill that purpose. Are you willing to be on a life mission? Certainly there are other valid life stances. Some prefer unstructured being time. And I've had some friends, like a cosmic feeling type Jungian analyst friend who always craved unstructured being time, just walking along the beach without an agenda. I get that. I get why that's great for them. It's not suitable to my essence because of a very active energy. Some people could say it's an immature, heroic archetype identification or whatever, but it's fun for me, and I get a lot done, and I produce things of value. But maybe when I'm 96 years old, I want to spend, an afternoon or a half hour staring out at a sunset from a balcony and just try out unstructured being time. Some prefer a mostly interpersonal or social fate, where the life mission is about caring for their kids or their spouse or whatever. And many prefer the easygoing, take it as it comes approach to life. And there is validity to this. So that the moment where there was a stunning moment, this is the age where the cathedrals of our particular age, I think that future cultural historians will recognize, will be the great TV series. Like if like I think The Sopranos was a great cultural milestone when they broke television shows out of the idea that like a sitcom, every show was like one complete story, and where you'd have this continuous story. Now you have an art form that rivals the novel in its ability to have so much exposition, learn so much about characters, and follow them for years. And but sometimes this art form, its weakness is that it's usually never written by one person. There's a committee writing the story. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So the series Lost began so brilliantly for the first 2-3 seasons, and then it got completely lost. And by the last season, I was just watching it out of faithfulness because of the early seasons. But it everybody had died and been reborn so many times. Like I didn't care about any of it anymore. And finally, this might have been close to the last episode, but it was definitely in the last season. A bunch of the main characters are running down the beach on the island, and and they're on this MacGuffin mission, or to save the universe or whatever. And now there is this African American woman who in the first season had been separated from her Caucasian husband because the plane had broken in half and they were in different parts of the island. I mentioned the races only to help you remember, if you watch the series, the two characters. They're both late middle-aged. But for the last season or two, we haven't even seen them. They just kind of dropped out of the story. And so now all these characters are running down the beach, and they haven't seen this woman for quite a long time either. And what is she doing? She's just hanging up clothes on a clothesline where she and her husband have built a hut and have decided to just live out their sunset years away from all the madness and of the other characters who are on some kind of a quest. And so they come breathlessly running up to her and you got to help us because the blah, 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 is going to blah, blah, blah. And then the island and the whole universe and, whatever. And she just looks at them. Her time signature is totally different, much slower. She just looks at them and goes what is it with you guys? It's always something. And then she just goes back to hanging the wash on the line. That's a legitimate life stance. Like Dorothy Canfield Fisher said, nothing is cheaper and shoddier than dramatic living. However, I would have to add to that, nothing's more exciting than that either. So I don't live that life, though I recognize its validity of unstructured being time and just taking it as it comes day by day. There's a soulful validity to that. I just don't do it. I have my own life mythology. I have created a dramatic quest for myself, but I believe in it, and I think I'm contributing something to the world by doing it. But I recognize the validity of not having a dramatic quest, but just living life in a good way your quest. That's legitimate too. There are light and dark aspects of all the life stances. For example, the quest can easily become a hyped up form of heroic adolescent energy that refuses to grow up, like the person who climbs the ladder to success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall. But it can also be the path of a warrior with heart. There are good and bad ways of doing the unstructured being time too. You can just be a slacker who's just kind of wasting your life. The most crucial and core form of courage is the will for ruthless and compassionate self-examination. If you lack the courage to face your inner demons, then you will fight them in the outer world as phantoms. The mixed case is when the phantom gets projected onto an actual outer world demon you must confront. So this kind of situation, which does happen, and I've faced it recently with an evil corporation that was totally incompetent and totally trying to rip me off. I legally can't even mention their name as part of the settlement now, but uh, they actually told me they had a 2-year warranty, and they said, well, you know what? We're not going to work with you in the warranty. Why not? We don't have to say why not. Well, who made this decision? Higher ups. What are their names and phone numbers? I don't have to say. That was the complete stone wall. This was basically, from the point of view of Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil, right? And it was many thousands of dollars, right, that they had paid them to do work that they did in a completely incompetent, fire hazard, total failure result. It took months and months of battling them without the help of a lawyer, but I've learned to fight City Hall from my dad and stuff like that, to fight these kind of evil bureaucracies, and I'm relentless. One of my closest friends calls me the Bronx Bulldog, and so I documented everything, and I'm good with language, so every time I talked to them, I would force them to incriminate themselves, and I kept fighting my way up the chain of command until eventually they agreed to pay me twice what I asked for. They paid every single penny I'd ever paid them, where I got to keep all the equipment they installed, a lot of which was quite valuable, at no cost. And although it wasn't worth all the anxiety and the trouble and the time I went through for it, but it was a very satisfying conclusion. So sometimes you do have to confront actual outer world demons or bullies or whatever. And in such situations, you need the subtle discernment to distinguish the phantom, that is, the projective aspects of such a confrontation. Make sure that in fighting monsters, you don't become a monster. Make sure that you've thoroughly recognized any area where you were in the wrong. But this was like a completely, as far as there was no ambiguity whatsoever in this particular situation. I tell people, don't see white hats and black hats, see everything grayscaled. But in this case, I was just 100% in the right, and they were 100% in the wrong, and no ambiguity whatsoever. And I just had to fight them and win the conflict. So that's a form of quest courage that's sometimes needed. Other times, the quest courage may require you to recognize that you're at fault, to admit it, make amends, and learn to do better next time. The pathologized version of quest courage could manifest as a tendency toward grandiose and inflated proclamations of what you will eventually do, while neglecting to work on your mission today. And we see a lot of people do this. I've fallen into the past, like when I'm like a famous movie director, and then I'm going to do this and we do that, and yeah, but you didn't do any film work today. It's all just talk, and which is giving you an unearned dose of narcissistic supply today, but you're not actually summoning the quest courage in the rubber meets the road way, where if you have a big dream and you aren't doing like at least 2 hours of work on a daily basis, it's probably never going to happen. So it could also pathologize as inflating an unworthy, minor, or mercenary endeavor into a quest. Like you used to see people with multi-level marketing schemes, and there'd be a charismatic leader about, this is like Celtech and so forth. I've watched friends go through this, and where like that becomes the heroic quest, but it's really just like a shoddy marketing deal, and a product that's been inflated into a religion. A warrior with a capital W is committed to life-affirming transpersonal aims. There's a very big difference between, you can see some of my warrior philosophy documents, especially start with, I think it's called The Way of the Warrior. Lowercase warriors, lowercase w, are either mercenaries or the brainwashed dupes of a military-industrial complex, fundamentalism, unthinking nationalism, or some combo thereof. To be a warrior with a capital W, we need ruthless self-examination to see our layers of conditioning, to work toward that rare quality called free will. Since I'm throwing everything in, including the kitchen sink into this card, I might as well give you my one-sentence religion, which is to carry the torch of consciousness forward and engage in rigorous self-examination to advance ethical conduct. That's an uppercase W stance. A lowercase warrior can be quite fearsome. Their titanium alloy exoskeleton can bristle with weapon systems, but they live their inner life on the outside only. And this is merely the life of an automaton. So you can be in a wheelchair and be a warrior, and you can have like the most advanced martial arts training and gun collection of all time, and you might be deadly, but you would be at best a warrior with a lowercase w, because you're not serving a transpersonal aim, something that's not just in your selfish self-interest, in other words. An uppercase warrior, however, can have a thought like Stephen Dedalus. That's James Joyce's literary alter ego. History is a nightmare from which I am trying to awaken. A warrior can be a cognitive rebel working in isolation, or a self-aware person called to physical action in the world. The transpersonal cause served by warriors must have a moral dimension. A moral relativist will insist that the moral aspect is entirely context-specific and fails to recognize universal ethics. But a person with access to global intuition can distinguish between, for example, the intense physical courage and efficiency of a Panzer tank commander who serves the pseudo-transpersonal aim of expanding the fatherland with great determination and German efficiency, and the moral courage of a self-aware person doing valuable work for the greater good. That work could involve physically fighting tyranny on whatever scale, from backyard bully to rogue nation state, or to like the evil company I was just talking about, and also, whether we agree with the stance or not, in the physical moral courage of a pacifist, staying true to their values in a dangerous situation. I think my dad was a conscientious objector. I'm not sure about that. I heard that, I think, sometime, but he was a medic, I believe, during, he was definitely in D-Day, but it was so traumatic he never talked about it. But if you're a medic in D-Day and a conscientious objector, and I know he was certified as a sharpshooter, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a conscientious objector, I think. But you're a medic, you're there to help other people, but like the same artillery shells and machine gun fire can hit you. So you don't have to be a pacifist. I'm not a pacifist. I believe it's appropriate to fight back in many situations. But that stance can be respected as a warrior stance when somebody's willing to, like the people, people who were willing to be ambulance drivers during the Spanish-American War and stuff like that. That can still be a great warrior stance. What I think it might be my favorite novel, The Charioteers by Mary Renault, we see some Quakers who are working in hospitals with the British war casualties, and also their lives are at risk as well. They're serving in battle zones and stuff, but other people heap contempt on them because they're not combatant soldiers. But we discover in the novel like how noble and the couple of key characters who are Quakers that we meet in the novel are. To be a warrior means locating your true will and the transpersonal aims you're willing to serve on your life mission, and then summoning your quest courage to take impeccable action despite resistance, stress, and danger.